This pandemic and kutafuta kazi sahi imekuwa vigumu, so nikaenda kuwa tout.
Kazi hakuna, pesa hakuna, so maisha imekuwa ni ngumu. Vijana wanafanya every hustle, wanaingia mitaani. Hata sasa sahi uwizi imekuwa mingi. Hii kazi yenye tunaletewa wiki mbili hii tunabadilishwa haitusaidii.
The alarming spike in unemployment rates attributed to the COVID pandemic.
COVID-19 emergency responses, which were necessary to keep people healthy or safe and prevent deaths, has actually led to contraction of jobs in the sense that the number of jobless people has increased. Now, the only choices the government has right now is we don't have one choice, which is basically what we call reopening of the economy. The only way we recover and these jobs begin to grow again is if people are kept safe.
Even so, the youth form the largest statistic of those with jobs. 6.7 million people aged between 20 and 34 are employed out of 15.8 million Kenyans. Brian Otieno, KTN News.
Thank you very much, Brian, for that story. And of course, remember, you can give your experiences and comments on this particular situation by giving us your comments via Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And our phone lines are now open. You can call in and be a part of this conversation. Tell us your experience and the difficulties you have faced. Do you think it is due to coronavirus? Are there other reasons why job losses are at an all-time high? We are at 1.72 million unemployment, a loss of jobs right now. So be a part of this one. Now, joining me for this discussion is Willie Odendo, who is a life coach, as well as Michael Thotho, who is the programs manager at Centonomy. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Now, yeah, this, in view of what's happening in recent months with COVID-19 and the situations that we were facing beforehand, I would like to start with you, Mr. Odendo. Give us an overview of what the situation is as far as employment and why we are hemorrhaging jobs right now.
Well, I think as a country, we have, this comes to show where we have placed our priority. And now is when the harvest of how we have lived in times of abundance and in times of peace, that our economy, the fundamentals that were driving our economy and the fundamentals that were holding our economy together were not sustainable in the long run. And so in terms of the job situation and in terms of the kind of leakage and drain that you're seeing in the workspace, it goes to show that some of the disruptions that have occurred, the pandemic has just accelerated what was coming, but it has just accelerated them. And now people have been able to have found themselves to be victim of a fast-paced work environment. Execution modalities have changed for some organizations. Like now, this should have been something we were doing physically, but now we are achieving it in a different format. And so the pandemic accelerated some processes and some events that were supposed to happen probably in a later time. So I think, yes?
So basically the ship was already leaking, so that was already something that was already happening. I'd like to bring in Michael into this conversation. Michael, do you agree with his sentiments that we were already facing a problem even before COVID-19, and this is just something that pushed it over the cliff?
I think in a way we were, just as Willie is saying. But now, when it comes to matters, finances, and how people were living,
yes,
I think people were living in this utopia. Yeah. But now this pandemic or this situation we are in is now reality. Okay, or now brings out how we should now be living. Yeah.
Okay.
Because back then, like let's say, like in December or in 2019,
right,
people are living, and I've been here before and I've said we need to have budgets, we need to track our expenses, all these things, yeah?
Yes.
But now people are seeing that actually, if I really had a budget or if I had a plan, I'd have been somewhere, comfortable right now, yeah? If I had an emergency fund, I'd have been good right now.
Yes.
But now all these things are now coming to bite us, yeah? And I think just as Willie was saying, I think yes, this ship was already sinking, but definitely there are ways how we can recover from all this.
There are ways that we can recover, but then while you might be able to live within your means and budget right and whatnot,
Yes.
honestly, you cannot foresee a whole entire pandemic. Are there systematic failures in terms of governance or in how our companies are run that are actually not doing right by the young people and the unemployed, which make a huge chunk of those who have lost their jobs right now?
I think when it comes to companies, we are seeing some companies that were able to shift and
Yes.
some companies that were not able to shift, and those have been the ones that have been letting people go. But now, it all comes to planning. Yeah?
All right.
All matters finances, it comes from a planning perspective.
Okay.
If a company did not have a plan or did not foresee or did not have contingencies for such things, then definitely the company might not survive. But again, if the company had a plan,
Yes.
if this happens, what are we going to do to our employees? What
Yes.
are we going to do to our customers? If something like this could happen.
Okay.
Right?
Mr. Odendo,
What
I'd
are
like
we
you to
going to
come
do?
in on the personal perspective. He's talked about the fact that a lot of people were not planning ahead. They were living in a utopia. Do you agree? And what should have been the personal finance situation for people just in case they lost their jobs, even though this is not something that one would anticipate?
Well, I can say that not many have the depth, financial depth, to be able to withstand a full-fledged pandemic.
Yeah.
Governments don't have the depth, and if a government doesn't have the depth, probably even people don't have the depth. And so I would not go hammer hard on people so much, because they sometimes find themselves as victims of regulations and victims of policies that are set in place by powers that are beyond them. But in terms of the ability of people to recover themselves financially, and that is where financial growth begins with a person. It doesn't begin with a policy. It doesn't begin with a community. It begins with a person. And when a loss occurs, this is a grievous situation. But the speed by which a person recollects himself and starts making the decisions that need to be made in terms of alterations that need to be altered, the technicalities that need to be put in place, those are the things that can help people to recover themselves.
Okay.
We very well, the basic salary of this country is about $100.
Yes.
And that's the bare salary. It's about $100. Now, if you're living on $100 and now you have been made to stretch for 6 months, no matter how much planning you can have, you may not have the depth to be able to sustain a full pandemic. And so it is both systemic and also personal when it comes to the recovery.
Okay, Michael, come on this level, because I'd like us to talk about the steps that the government has put forward to help people cope with this situation. We have Kazi Mtaani, where young people are expected to, engage in certain activities that would help them, have some form of employment at this time. Do you think these are the sorts of things we should be looking to squarely? Because we have a tendency of serikali saidia, and they are helping in that particular capacity. But when you think of dependency on government and on basically sometimes handouts, what does that irk you? What do you think about it, and how should people view their own lives and their own incomes?
Now, very good question. Now, the thing about handouts is sustainability.
Yeah.
How sustainable is it? For how long can you go? Can you keep on giving handouts? Right? What the government is doing with Kazi Mtaani is really good, but is it sustainable? Yeah. How long are they going to have these people engaged? Right? Now, with the youth, if you have that opportunity of engaging in Kazi Mtaani, well and good, go for it. Yeah. But also, let us look at sustainability.
Right.
Let us go for opportunities which are more sustainable. Okay. So what the government is doing is very commendable, but I would like to urge them to come up with sustainable efforts. Yeah. And then also for the youth, I think what is sustainable right now could be coming up with skills or looking at opportunities and gaps that are there in the market that you can tap into. Like, for example, there are these people who went viral I think a few weeks ago. The guys who are making retractable furniture. I think we've all seen that, yeah?
Yes.
And yes, you see, when we have such, when we come and utilize such skills, we now start coming up with sustainable sources of income, right?
Yeah.
So that now we don't have to rely on handouts from the government, which do come in handy, but the sustainability is what is lacking. So we also need to come up with sustainable projects that can go on and on and on, even after all this is resolved.
Okay, Mr. Odendo, could you come in on this one? Tell us what about sustainability. What type of approach should we have been having even before, even people, let's talk about the people who have lost their jobs. What type of habits should they have had to ensure that they better survive these times? And at the same time, what type of sustainable economic activities should they be engaged in to ensure that they're not caught on the wrong side in case of a pandemic or any other thing that could happen and ensure and leave you flat-footed?
Well, I'll start by making a statement here. Now, in times of peace or in times of normalcy, the only way to survive is thrive. Thriving is surviving. But in times of crisis and in times of pandemics, surviving is thriving. And so anything the government is doing to help people survive, anything you can do to survive, you're actually thriving. You may not be able to get the normalcies that you normally had, but now the need has now moved from survival, from thriving to surviving. And so I want to congratulate whether it's government, whether it's a person who is has moved to a smaller house or has moved into their mother's house or has moved into their father's house. All these things that you're doing in order to survive the pandemic are necessary to prepare you for your fight back, because you have to prepare for your fight back. And then again, there are factors beyond your control. The head of state said recently the numbers are coming down, so people are getting more excited. Should it spike up and then there is more closure? So there are factors within and beyond your control. And so you have to put yourself in a place where you can survive the best and the longest within the conditions that are there. One of the things I would advise people right now is technology has become the tool of power. And right now, if you see globally, the top tech companies right now are raking in, churning people into dollar billionaires. And people like Bezos has just like tripled his wealth within the last 7 months because of the power and the demand of the technological space. So your new acre, your new warehouse, your new storehouse, your new shop is the cyberspace. That's your new space. That's where you should be camping. It is not as costly to get a space in cyber, your Facebook page, your media, and all these things. Now, unfortunately, for some of us, we have turned our pages to be, it has everything. So by the time you want to sell something, we are seeing everything. It has kieleweke, tangatanga, takataka, and it has everything. So by the time you pitch that you have a product you're selling, nobody comes to you for buying and selling. Now, your media, your social media, all your media has now become your warehouse, has now become your store, has now become your front shop. And how you profile and package yourself affects how people consume you. And so you have got to go back and revisit, how have I profiled myself in this cyberspace? Because this is my new warehouse. This is the next door where I'm going to make my pitch for the next sale.
Adaptability is key. Now we have a caller coming to us on from Kirinyaga, Joshua Mutinda. Good morning to you. Can you hear me? Joshua Mutinda, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning.
Morning to you, Trix.
What is your contribution to this conversation?
No, I want to disagree with our panelists.
Okay.
With all the due respect. I don't think Kenyans started lost jobs because of the pandemic. I think the pandemic was merely a catalyst. In the last 4 or so years, we've seen companies downsizing and restructuring. As a matter of fact, most of the companies were unable to meet their financial obligations. And if you look at where we went wrong as a country, number one, the kind of corruption that we've experienced as a nation is really denying the Mwananchi the opportunity, because monies that are supposed to be invested to create opportunities and jobs for the Kenyans are being pilfered by the ruling class, number one. Number two, we killed manufacturing because of the cheap imports, and so the local companies are unable to compete fairly, and most of them have been run out. Finally, if you look at the government, the bulk of our public servants are actually the senior citizens. They are old people, and you will expect that those jobs are given to the young people who are the majority in the country. So I think us trying to blame the pandemic really is uncalled for. I think we had a bigger problem before. And like what the life coach has said, that Kenyans live in utopia, that they are not able to manage their funds. Honestly, Kenyans have not even had enough money in the past to sustain their livelihood. So I think there is a bigger problem that needs to be addressed by the government, and not purely base everything and blame it on the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Joshua, and we'll allow the panelists to respond to that. But let's get comments of James Korir, who's coming to us from Eldoret. Good morning, James.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Yes. Please reduce the volume of your device and then give us your comment on this topic.
Yeah, thank you very much, madam. I'm from Eldoret.
Yes.
And actually, the pandemic has caused a lot of job losses. Yeah. Personally, I'm an hotelier.
Yes, yes.
And we closed the business on early March, and we have not been able to go back to our jobs just because of the pandemic.
How are you coping with that situation?
There's nothing, because most of the businesses are closed. And also, when you want to start anything, you cannot start anything because of the finance. The finance cannot be able to be cannot be seen anywhere because of because almost all the businesses are closed.
Now, there are certain steps that have been taken by government, such as ensuring that entrepreneurs are cushioned. There's Kazi Mtaani, and there's also the fact that banks have been asked to be lenient with their loans, particularly for entrepreneurs and business people. Do you feel that these steps have helped you as a business person, as a person trying to earn a living? Have they helped you in any way?
For Kazi Mtaani, that one is specifically for the youth. And we could not be able to go to Kazi Mtaani because of the age.
Okay.
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, James, for your comment this morning. Now, I'd like to throw this one over to Michael. Clearly, there are certain things that weigh down on young people that they cannot actually handle. They're beyond them. We were talking about a pandemic, inaccessibility to cash, and we have talked about sustainability, but it seems a bit difficult. Michael, could you speak to those concerns that have been raised by our viewers?
Wow, some of those concerns are, to be honest, a bit out of our control. Like when you talk about corruption and how the government is spending the money, I think. But again, what can we do as ourselves? Yeah, as much as the government has come up with all these initiatives of Kazi Mtaani, of talking to the banks so that they can have they can give some grace period to people who had loans. I think. Even us as the youth, let's take what the government has given us, and then also try to also come up with steps that us ourselves can help us to go around this pandemic, and then also to thrive and also even to survive. Now, first things first, I think all good things need to have planning, right? And what you can say is, even a building, when a building is going to be built, like let's say the most famous building in KICC, there was a blueprint to that building, yeah? There was a plan to that building. Even when you talk about the successful businesses that Mr. Welly is talking about, all this, he's talking about Jeff Bezos and how Amazon is standing to, Jeff Bezos into a billionaire. There is a plan. or there was a systematic plan on how that came to happen. Now, when it comes to us, the youth and our lives, when we have a plan, then definitely things are going to be better for us. Okay? I think first things first, let us have a plan on how we are going to live. How we are going to live, first of all, with our finances, because almost everything boils down to finances. So if we have a plan, first of all, I think we will be good. Now, this plan, we need to also now come up and follow it. Yeah, follow it to the latter. If it is something like personal finances, you need to have a plan, you need to have a budget. I'm going to spend this on this, I'm going to spend this on this, I'm going to save this, I'm going to have an emergency fund so that when something like this happens, I can have something to go back to fall back on, right? So I think if we have plans and we have plans for those plans and have plans for those plans, if those plans don't work out, I think we will be in a better position.
Yes, Michael, sorry to cut you short. Let's say your finances have been completely cut. You are not able to save enough or predict that you lose your job. Could you envision this type of a person and just give advice of where to start? Because some people do literally live hand to mouth, and they do need some sort of advice that would help them fish themselves out of that hole. So could you envision that type of a person? And maybe they even moved, as Willie said, back to their mother's house. So how do you get off your back and now start from zero?
Yes, just as Willie was saying, there are things that we need to do. Right now, we need to adjust and recalibrate how we were living. Yeah, we need to adjust. Probably we had plans. Even that person that you're telling me to envision, probably they had a plan. But now what they need to do is to recalibrate that plan, right? Go back to the drawing board and see this plan that I have or this plan that I had, is it going to help me now in this current situation? If yes, then go ahead with it. If no, then go back to the drawing board and come up with another plan. Just as Will was saying, if it is reducing your expenses, your costs, moving back home, or something like that, then I think that should be the first thing to do, is to look at your plan now, look at also your prospects. If you do not have any prospects, I think what Will was saying should be the first thing that you do, is to see, now, what can I do? I am here, what can I do? If I am a young person, I probably have the option of moving back home, okay? If I'm also a young person, I also have that opportunity of, I have strength, I can go out there and, look for a bag or two today. I can buy something for 50 shillings and I can sell it for 70 shillings and make my 20 shillings profit. You get what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah? We do get it. Now, Willie, could you tell us, you've heard what he said and the complaints that have come from some of our viewers about the very heavy things that weigh on our situations, such as corruption and just systems that are not working. So you're a life coach. Let's say I come to you, the floor has fallen out from under my feet and now I'm just trying to survive. What sort of advice would you give me that would enable me to actually get my footing, find a business, or perhaps make use of my talents and just survive, and then, far from surviving, thrive?
Well, the first thing I would always say is, first of all, you have to track what's your largest recurrent expenditure. Mm-hmm. The largest recurrent expenditure is what is giving you the feeling of the ground opening up beneath you.
Okay.
Now, if your largest recurrent expenditure is food, then how do you ensure that you bring that to a minimum as much as possible?
Okay.
For many people who are living in the city, if the largest recurrent expenditure is rent, you see, how do I negotiate, or how do I foresee events happening so that I don't dig deeper into this trench? And so if I need to negotiate the largest recurrent expenditure so that I am able to relieve myself and be able now to live on minimal resources and on minimal, be left with something to hold on up to the next. And so the first thing I would say is, you have to see what's your largest recurrent expenditure and how are you able to meet it. If your largest recurrent expenditure, it stays standard and life has begun to take a hit on you, then this is what is giving you that feeling of being overwhelmed and drowning. And so that is time for hard decisions to let go, whether it is driving to work is your largest recurrent expenditure. You have to confront it and say, I will not use the car, and I'll have to find another means of transport, either carpooling or walking, or you have to find a way, because we are talking about surviving. So we are talking about operating on reducing inflows. So your aim here is, how best do I survive on reducing inflows? So that's the first thing. What's the largest recurrent expenditure? Secondly, you have got to analyze your network, because everything that you're doing, somebody else within your network they can be able to do it conveniently, and you are doing it sacrificially. And so whatever you are sacrificing and someone is able to do it conveniently, you can partner with them. You can tell them, hey, if you're going to work, why don't you give me a ride? And what I'm supposed to pay as fare, I can do this. Or why don't we cost share and move into, we get into one house, or we get into something, so that your network has a way of providing you with a tool that you don't necessarily have available by yourself. So if you can access your network and exploit your networks. Now, this I say, the pandemic, and I want to tell my friend, I said when we were starting, the pandemic just accelerated events that were already occurring in this country. It has not brought corruption was there. It has not brought incompetence was there. So it has just accelerated some of these things. So you have to check your networks and see who in my network, maybe somebody in your network, they inherited a house from their grandfather and they're living alone. And so you say, if I move in, can we move in? And I chip in food and we live here and I'll be taking care of the food. There is always something that can be reduced so that you can be able to survive. So you tap into your networks and see your networks. Thirdly, I would say, involve the services of an expert. Now, you don't know how to swim until you are with a swimmer, somebody who knows how to swim. Involve the services of an expert. Involve somebody to help you, first of all, grieve through the losses, because everything that you bought, everything that you had, gave you some sense of dignity. It gave you some sense of progress and value. And now having to lose your house to move into your mother's house, you need a debrief. And now you need to involve somebody who will help you grieve moving back into your mother's house, or grieve walking after you've been driving for a while, or grieve having to change your diet or anything. Involve the services of an expert, because they will help you to separate the emotion from the decision. Because sometimes we procrastinate decision because of the emotion that comes of shame, withdrawal, neglect, change, all these emotions. They will help you to separate that. And then fourthly, don't neglect your body. Things are happening around you, but don't neglect your health. As this pandemic is pushing outside there, people are picking up secret habits. Some are getting into excessive drinking, others are getting into excessive eating, others are getting into excessive fasting. There's just some excess something.
Yeah.
Don't neglect your body. Do some exercise. Stretch your body. Put your body out there so that you get your mind sometimes off the reality. For you to fight, you've got to be fit. And for you to survive, you've got to be fit. And so if survival is for the fittest, then do some exercise. Put yourself out there so that your life is bigger than the bills that you have. You are a living person. You are living before you had bills.
Yes.
And so go out there, create some time, even if it's 30 minutes, and put yourself out and exercise. I think that is something that can be done with immediacy, and it will give you your fighting chance to be able to get back and get going.
Okay, thank you very much for that very in-depth, outline of what to do. These experiences can be humbling, but at the same time, it should not result in self-neglect. Now, Michael, I would like you to come in on this level. He has talked about seeking professional help. You work with Centonomy, and how can an organization, whether it's a life coach or an organization such as Centonomy, help someone who is in that position, start up and, get back into the swing of things?
Like just as you mentioned, yes, I work for Centonomy, and what we are currently doing right now, if you go, just like Welly was saying, we have shifted. Our hardware is now here, now online, what we used to do in, physically, we are now doing virtually. And you can actually go onto our social media platforms and you can see a lot of content there, a lot of ways on how you can start living, in these times, how you can start adjusting, right? If it is your personal finances, if it is your business, if it is your career, you will find things or tips and steps that will help you there. Okay. Now, for us at Centonomy, the first thing that we'd like to say is we can't just sit there and say, oh, pandemic, oh, government, all this, all this, all this.
Yeah.
Now, we have to do something, right? Just like Willie was saying, we have to do something. Again, it's been like 5 months since all this lockdown. We can't just continue staying in the house and saying, let us hope they open soon, right? Or let us hope this pandemic ends. We have to get out and do something, right? Be proactive, be active. Just like Willie was saying, you have to be fit. Now, my advice is go out there, right? Again, keep all the measures, social distance, mask, sanitize, but again, be out there. Look for opportunities, right? But have a plan.
Okay.
Right? Just like Willie was saying, look at your biggest recurring expenditure. Things, again, recalibrate if it is not currently working with your plan and with your income, right? Again, we have to tame what is going out, okay? What is going out in terms of finances, how we are spending our money, right? Things that we were spending money on previously, we will have to cut, okay?
Yes.
Just like going out, like eating out, hanging out with friends. Such things at such times are not, we can't say are very important, so we have to cut out on such things, yeah?
Yes.
And see where we can now drive those funds that we were using for those things that were not really necessary, and now drive these funds to now things that can now, start making more funds. Again, one thing that I'd like to urge the youth is looking at assets, right? All the things that we have at our disposal, right? How are we using them, right? Now, I know you mentioned assets and people start thinking cars, buildings, machinery, all these things, and you're like, I don't have assets. But the thing is, we have assets, we have things at our disposal. Look at the phone, right? Look at the laptop. What can you do with it, right? Can you have a way of bringing in money with what you currently have, right? If it is a phone, we are seeing all these people now, many comedians have propped up, and are making us laugh throughout this period, yeah?
Yes.
Why? Because they are using the asset that they have and also the asset that they have this time and also their skill and their talent to make something out of it, right?
Okay.
Just like Willie was saying, the social media platforms that we have, how are we using them, right? Are we putting on everything in there? People, I don't know, today we are selling shoes, tomorrow we're talking about politics. What are we doing with all these platforms? If you're that person, can you be able to separate your platform so that you have, if you're a business person and you also want to talk about other things, can you have a page that's talking about business so that when people want to talk about business with you, this is the page they go to. And when people want to talk about other social things, this is the page they go to talk about other social things, right? Again, look at the assets that we have and how we can start using them to make something out of
all right. Now, as we conclude, I'd like Mr. Otieno to give your closing remarks briefly and just tell us what you would give us a parting shot, basically.
Well, I would like to tell somebody out there that as hard as it may get, don't lose hope, first of all. Negotiate, work on your negotiating skills. Everything can be negotiated. And if you work on your negotiating skills, you can always get a bargain and you can be able to live through the storm. Thirdly, I would tell them that begin to volunteer and look for a place where you can make yourself available. Look for somebody who, even if necessarily they can't give you pay, but they can give you a meaningful exposure, a meaningful engagement. And then fourthly, I would tell you, rebrand yourself. Work on your resume, repackage yourself, because the new market that is coming post-COVID will become faster, will become more ruthless, because more people, more sharks will be going into the water to look for the small that is available to be eaten. So work on your resume, keep improving yourself, and don't give up. Don't give up. It may get difficult, but you can negotiate yourself out of it. Don't overborrow. Don't get into debts in the name of hoping things get better. Don't overborrow. Don't get yourself into debts that are not prudent. debt should not be to service your recurrent expenditure. It should be for something like an investment that will bring in, not something that will manage what has been going out. So don't get into debt, because when you start the cycles of debt, you'll get to borrow here, to pay here, to pay here. So track your debt, manage your debt appetite. There are so many things that would like to lure you with debt, but track your debt, because it may be a deeper ditch than the one you're in right now.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Now, as we go on a break, just remember you can call in, and we have a few callers. So for our guests, stay put. We're going to take a short break and perhaps get back and have our callers ask and have your questions answered by our experts here on Morning Express. So let's take that short break.
Right, and just to look at what's happening in social media, and your comments are coming through. Joshua Onsomu says, actually, at the beginning, I had fear I could lose it, but I thank God it has been faithful to date. I feel sorry for those who have lost their jobs. I feel them because I'm surrounded by some of them. Frederick says, I appreciate what God has done at this point in time. I've been unpaid ever since I started at the start of this pandemic. Philip, I used to make and sell biometric attendance gadgets for schools. Business was speaking well, but it stopped abruptly. Couldn't pay rent, but another door opened. Now I make proximity sensors and notifies people at home that a certain car is approaching for the gate to open. Innovative Kenyans, absolutely commendable the jobs that you're doing. The question we had asked and we'd like to hear from you is, have you lost your job due to the pandemic, or your business for that matter? And how have you been coping? Share your experience. Do let us